Avery.
Can you hear me now?
I can. How you doing, man?
Okay. Why don't they just make it so when you log into this thing, it's already like no one logs into Zoom to like actually just stare at each other on mute. It may as well just start off of mute.
I hear you, but I think it's for like group sessions when there's more than one person and there's like just massive talking.
Okay.
I've heard embarrassing stories about like older folks who aren't acquainted with Zoom yet, and they don't think it's recording anymore, and they stand up and they're in their underwear and just embarrassing things happening. So I think
Yeah,
it's
or people on the toilet. Yeah, I've heard all these stories that honestly, when I hear them, I'm like, really? Come on. How do you
oh
even manage?
yeah. No, come on, man. People our parents' age, you know that's happening.
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
Do I need to set my phone? Like, is this going to be an audio and video or just audio?
I was going to do video too, but if that's okay with you, are you using your
Yeah,
phone?
I am. That's totally cool. Let me,
You can just tilt it the other way.
yeah, yeah. I just didn't want to have to mess with it.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna head to the kitchen real quick, and then
Okay.
that way I can just set it up. I've got one of those phone cases that it'll hold it up itself as opposed to me holding it.
Totally.
Oh, we might get the Christmas tree in the background.
Oh, see, I get the view of the whole house now. Are you calling from Silverton?
Yes, yes, I am.
Nice. Nice. You guys are living the dream life out there.
Yeah, we really are. We're pretty grateful. Unfortunately, so far this year, the avalanche conditions have been pretty scary. So
Is
I'm
there a lot of
hoping.
snow?
Actually, not really. And I wouldn't say that's the problem. The problem was about a couple weeks ago, we had a couple heat cycles come through.
Mm, okay.
And that's what the problem was. Okay, cool.
Gotcha.
Is that good? Will that work?
That works. Looks good, man. You looking sharp today.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I just got done with a nap.
Dude, that's all right. I just got done with a workout, so we're good, man. Perfect. So, man, it looks like you just put a nice little bow on your 2020 year, man, with the Backbone FKT. Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, I needed that big time.
Yeah.
Are we recording? Should I say anything important or no?
No, we're recording, so you can say whatever you
Okay.
want, man.
Yeah, yeah. And just one final thing. The dishwasher's running. Can you hear that in the background? I just don't want to mess it up.
Can't hear a thing. Nope, you're
Not
good.
even now. Okay, cool.
Nope.
Um, yeah. I was really needing that. As you know, or maybe you don't know, I was going for Nolan's. That was kind of my main objective through the summer, and obviously, just about any time Sabrina was out there, I was out there as well,
Mhm.
especially through May, June, and July. And got halfway. I mean, I started showing symptoms previous to halfway through Nolan's, but halfway was when I decided to pull the plug. I had started experiencing some pretty bad altitude sickness problems,
Mm.
mainly just pretty bad migraine, which I couldn't see straight. Started vomiting, extremely just loud bell ringing sensation in my head, and honestly, it's like one of the very few times, if not only times, that I've been genuinely scared in the mountains. I mean, there's not, especially in the summer, there's not much that I would say is like really intimidating or scares me in the
Mm.
summer.
Mm.
But that was one of the instances where I actually felt like I was really reduced to something that was small, and I just felt I was really scared, man, and I was on top of Harvard when it was at its absolute worst, and just like descending it was an absolute nightmare.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I had to drop at I'm Tough in Idaho, which was also just this. That was this fluke thing I've never had happen before. Both of my IT bands flared up basically from the very start,
Mm.
and I had no inclination that that was going to happen through the training block or even leading up to the race. It was like this super odd thing that happened.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, the few weeks after I'm Tough, I just was definitely beating myself up and having a hard time getting around what I would call two DNFs, even if it was an FKT attempt,
Mhm.
which I had never done before. And Sabrina just kind of made it a point to tell me that, if I don't believe in myself, then I'm not going to get anywhere. And as much as she believes in me, there was that like that's just not going to do anything. And I kind of just made a conscious decision there that I was going to decide to be positive and keep going. And I actually wasn't, backbone was something I was going to do in February. If the Black Canyon endurance run was canceled, that was kind of my backup plan. And I was supposed to do Pitchell 100K, which my buddy Kyle Curtin just set the record on, I think yesterday.
Okay. Why the backbone? That's in California. You're a Colorado guy.
Yeah. Backbone because, so I went out to do the backbone for the first time about 6 years ago. Well, didn't go do the backbone. I went to go do Sean O'Brien.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was kind of my first introduction to the backbone trail. And ever since then, minus last year, I've taken some sort of training trip out there to go run. There's a hotel, believe it or not, in Calabasas that's always dirt cheap. It's like this hidden gym. And we always go out there and stay there for, it's usually like $60 a night or something. And it's like, for $60, it's a nice hotel and it's a great opportunity to get out of the snow and go train. And the very first time I went out there to train, we ran the backbone quite a bit. And I remember thinking how cool it would be to run the full duration of the trail. And this was kind of before FKTs were cool, which obviously FKTs have only been cool this year. No offense to anyone that's done FKTs before this year. But it was, yeah. So it just kind of made sense. I'd already ran a large majority of the trail and I had a few connections out there that could help me with it.
Okay, cool. Going back to Nolan's. So you are an altitude guy. You live in Silverton. You train at altitude all the time. What do you attribute your altitude sickness to? Because, I mean, Sabrina obviously had a killer year on Nolan's, so I know you were out there a lot. I've had several attempts at Nolan's and still haven't been able to put it together. And I've faced a little bit of altitude sickness out there as well. Do you have any answers for me there?
I actually think I do. Okay. I have a really good buddy of mine. I like to say he's a genius. And we were talking about how my training went. And he specifically asked me what I did. And I told him, obviously I ran tons of 14ers and ran some of them pretty fast. And that was the problem. I couldn't go back into any of my training and see where I spent even like a couple minutes at 14,000 feet. I mean, I was just always tagging the summit and then just full speed back down.
Okay.
And then he brought up a really good point, something that Carpenter used to do. I think they're called 3-2-1. So you start at 11,000 feet, run to 14, run down to 12, run to 14, run to 13, and then back up to 14. What that does is even if you are running fast, it gives you prolonged time at altitude. And I think that's exactly what I was missing, was that prolonged time at altitude. And maybe it was just, it wasn't my day, or I've heard the theory from other people that at the speed I was going, perhaps my blood oxygen level couldn't maintain because I was dropping from like 14,000 feet to 11K in minutes, or I don't know. I don't know if that's the answer, but I definitely would say that I just need more prolonged training up high.
Okay. So it's still on the list. Are you thinking about taking another crack at it next year, or?
Right now, no.
Okay.
I'm pretty set on I won't run anything 100 miles or longer next year. I mean, of course I say that now, but I've been ultrarunning for 8 years now, and I've done multiple hundreds, if not 200s a year. And I think I'm ready for a break. And honestly, I really, really enjoy the 100-kilometer distance, which is basically what the backbone trail was. And I'm just going to focus on that next year. Hopefully races will actually kind of resume and go back to normal. And I'm signed up for a bunch of 100Ks, and that's kind of the tentative plan. And then if they all get canceled, I would imagine I'll probably go do Pitchell on the East Coast and then figure it out from there.
Okay. Okay. Why are you cutting back from the 100 milers or the longer distance? You said you needed a break, but do you just feel like the 100K and 50 mile is just more your thing? I know you're a fast guy, and it seems to be kind of your wheelhouse.
I think that's just my general interest right now.
Huh.
I like the 100-mile distance more than anything. I think it kind of is the epitome of ultra running without taking away anything from 50K, 50 mile, 100K, because I enjoy those distances. But I think it's just a general interest right now. And I don't know. I just don't feel like, I just don't want to punish my body like that this year, and kind of just see what I can get out of not training or running a 100-mile race. Because the truth of the matter is I didn't run a 100-miler this year either. But the training that went into Nolan's was pretty extreme, whereas I won't be training like that for a 100-kilometer race or a 50-miler or whatever it may be. And I think that's important too. Like that all adds up. So just a year off sounds really nice.
Yeah. You've earned it, man.
You're off from hundreds.
Right. You're still going to be out there breaking your body, but it still seems like a break compared to what you're used to, I'm guessing. So
yeah. And this is the first time I've done this. Yeah. It's the first time I've done this, and maybe I'll gain some kind of benefit for 2022 when I do decide to run 100. Maybe there'll be some kind of breakthrough there. Maybe not. Either way, it's worth a try. And I don't think I'm losing anything by that.
Yeah. Good for you. That's a mature decision. I can get behind that. So
it took 8 years to figure out.
Yeah, for sure. How old are you right now?
I'm 28.
28. Okay. So you may or may not know this. Our 6 degrees of separation is, I think when you were living in Steamboat for a while, one of your roommates was Ashley Erba. Is that right?
Yeah, very, very shortly. I think that was shortly. Yeah, maybe two weeks or so. Yeah.
Oh, a couple weeks. Yeah. And then she moved out and ended up living with me in Louisville, Colorado. And Logan was my roommate at the time. And so she ended up living with me for a while. And she's the one who first told me about you. She's like, yeah, I was living with this Avery guy, and I don't know who he is. He's a young guy. And, he says he's going to do all these ultras and all this stuff. And at the time, nobody really knew.
She was like, he smokes too much weed.
That came up. Oh, that came up.
I'm sure it did.
No. And, so that was my introduction to you. So ever since then, I've kind of kept an eye on you. And at first, I think that people kind of looked at you, and I don't want this to sound harsh, but I think at first people kind of looked at you as maybe, I hate to say the word cocky, but maybe the word cocky kind of like, this guy, he just comes out and he says he's going to do all this crazy stuff. But now, years later, after you've done all this crazy stuff and accomplished all these big goals, I look at you like you and Sabrina are just like manifesting generators. It feels like you guys just come out and you say, yeah, this is what I'm going to do this year. And you have no qualms about it. And you don't make any excuses for yourself. And then you go out and you do it. Is manifesting your future and your destiny a big part of your life? And is that part of your training, like visualization? Is that something you think about?
It's not something I think about. That might be something Sabrina thinks about, but Sabrina's like tough ruggedness rubs off on me. Mm-hmm. And I suppose maybe if I was cocky or maybe overly confident in earlier years, I just kind of knew what I was coming from. And I think no one knew who I was until I moved out to Colorado. And obviously I built up a little bit more of an audience once I decided to kind of be an advocate for cannabis, but I knew what I was doing before Colorado out on the East Coast. And I kind of thought, the times that I am putting up for the training or lack thereof that I have, I think this is an indicator of like, once I do have the adequate training grounds, I really think I could do really well. And I think that's where some of that confidence stemmed from. And then, really, I think like going out and doing big races like her or Grand Raid or whatever it may be, that was just, I've always wanted to do those sort of races just because they're generally more difficult than most races, or like relatively speaking. And it's not even like that I think I'm going to do great at them. I do think I excel in like suffering, especially at that sort of category of race. But beyond that, I think it's just like more of the adventure. And don't get me wrong, like I am competitive, but that's how I single out particular races.
Yeah. And, like I said, cocky sounds kind of harsh, and I don't know if that's exactly what I mean. Yeah, just overconfident maybe. But like I said, you say what you're going to do, and then you go out and you do it, and you've proved it over and over again. So, looking back, man, the career that you've had in ultra running is pretty impressive. So hats off to you, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I feel like I've done something, but I also feel like I haven't done nearly enough yet. So,
well, sure. Where does that drive come from? I mean, you were a young guy when you moved out to Colorado and you just knew what you wanted. Like, where does that drive come from with you?
well, I think now part of that drive is just I don't want to give up the lifestyle I have. So, I mean, the only way to do that is to compete and to continue on and keep finding harder race. Well, I don't need to be harder races, but maybe just as difficult and more competitive races. Mm-hmm. I feel like now I have, you know, myself and Sabrina included, we've achieved something that is, I think, something that we have both wanted for a few years now. And I think we're there. And now we just want to sustain it and also, you know, obviously continue to grow. But I think that's a big push for like continuing success, is just because I don't want to go to a 9-to-5 job. That sounds terrible. And it's like, this is what I do want to do. And then outside of that, you know, there's just obviously like most runners, I enjoy getting out and having big days in the mountains. Totally. It's definitely pretty simplistic, and I wish I could make it sound a little bit better than that, but I just don't want to give up what I have, you know?
Well, I get that like now in present day, but when you first moved out to Colorado, it seems like you still had this drive. Is that something you were born with? Did you learn that somehow, or where did that come from?
I mean, I think my competitive nature came from basketball growing up. I was, at least for being 5'6" and white, like I was pretty competitive. And, I think a lot of that competitive spirit still stems directly from basketball. And I just, you know, I think I to some extent I got lucky when I found running. I obviously, like most people, it's not like I just started with ultras. I started running 5Ks and 10Ks and joined a local running club and started training with some of the collegiate athletes in the town I was living in. And naturally just found ultra running through YouTube, and decided, well, that seems like a really tough challenge. And after my first event, I was just absolutely hooked, specifically because of what you had to endure. It seemed so, I guess, like, ignorantly, I really thought after my first ultra that I had done something so special that like very few humans ever do. Mm-hmm. And then obviously as I grew in the sport, it's like, okay, there's a lot of people doing this. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think that's what initially got me into it. It was just so hard that I felt like I was like doing something with like some sort of purpose, because it was just that difficult. Like, it just made me, I mean, previous to ultra running, while I was in college, like I really didn't have a clue what I was doing with my life or where I was going with it. I was just doing what I've been told since I was a child, that you go to college and then you get a job. And like, I really didn't know what that meant. And then here comes ultra running and I drop out of college and feel like I have purpose.
Yeah. Yep. That'll do it right there.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool, man. That's really cool. So you're obviously an advocate for cannabis use, which I think is pretty awesome. And I think that I don't smoke anymore, but I think that you coming out and having a voice for that is pretty important. I see the benefits. I see the benefits of it when training. I can totally get behind it 100%. Has any of that changed over the years for you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say how I consume has changed. Absolutely. Don't get me wrong, I still love smoking flower. I think that's definitely my favorite form of consumption, but I've cut back on that, and I cut back more or less in periods based on training. If I'm in a big training block, I typically just do edibles. Sure. However, directly after events, especially like the Backbone Trail, I'll usually go buy like a quad of flour. It's just 2/8. Most people probably aren't going to know what I'm talking about. Anyways, it lasts me like 2 to 3 weeks. And when it's gone, and I'm done smoking until after the next event or race or whatever it may be. I would say that's the biggest way that it has evolved for me, is just like being healthier with it, and using more edibles, and then obviously fine tuning when I use, which is you know, the amount before a run, the amount perhaps before I go to bed for a good night's rest, and then you know, just overall recovery through CBD products as well.
Yeah, I think that you speaking out and kind of being the poster boy for that sort of lifestyle in the ultra running world is important, because you're able to touch a lot of people that might not have recognized ultra running to begin with. Do people reach out to you and say, thank you for speaking up, thank you for being on our side?
Yeah, I think it'd be fair to say at least once a week.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, once a week for a while now. Yeah, I mean, and like you touched on something that's pretty cool, is the fact that there's a relatively different audience that I think, or at least a portion of it, that follows me through whatever social media outlets that not every ultra runner has. And those are you know, those are cannabis advocates that oftentimes like they follow my sponsors, and then they kind of find me through that, and then it encourages them to get out, especially when you live in a state like Colorado, to get out and hike more, run more, ski more, whatever it may be. And I think that's been one of the most fulfilling parts about it, is I am reaching out to people that are not already active, which is super awesome for sure.
Which is huge. Yeah, you can inspire a whole bunch of other people that might not have noticed ultra running otherwise. I used to be really into martial arts, specifically jujitsu. And there's this guy in the jujitsu world named Eddie Bravo. I don't know if you've ever heard the name, but he, in a way, you guys have similarities. He came into the jujitsu world and was a big cannabis supporter. And that's how he kind of put his stamp on the world. And he wrote this book, the very first book that came out. It was like an instructional guide on jujitsu. And in the beginning of the book, he listed all these people that he's thanking, like his instructor, and he's friends with Joe Rogan. And the very last one was cannabis, because cannabis was the thing that inspired him to begin his jujitsu journey to begin with. And, you know, a lot of the old timers looked at him like, you know, you shouldn't be doing this. You're a bad influence on kids, blah, blah, blah. But then again, he reached this huge other bunch of people that just thought it was, you know, right on. Like they were really into it. And as the years have gone on, he ended up changing jujitsu for the better. Like he just created like a game within the game. And, so, in a way, you sort of remind me of him. There's similarities there. So I'm just curious, like, where you're going to take this thing, man. I'm just looking forward to the future, because I think that you're just kind of knocking the door down, and who knows where it can go from here.
Yeah, I feel like it's just starting, and you made me think of something. So as far as just like being a positive role model, there's actually, so in order to be sponsored by a cannabis company, your social media platform actually has to comprise of a certain percentage of adults, so 21 and above. And you had mentioned about Bravo that perhaps his mentors thought this was a bad look, and he wasn't being perhaps a better mentor for other people. And that's been something that's been brought up in the past, is like, well, do you think you're a positive role model for people who can't consume cannabis, or like kids? And you know, I think that is possible. Like I think those two different paths can cross. And I mean, I hate to say, I use this pretty frequently, but like majority of adults do drink, and at the end of the day, especially in Colorado, like I think people are actually more okay with people being cannabis users than drinkers. And I think those paths can converge, and as it so happens to be that majority of my followers are above the age of 21, like 90% or something higher than that. I can't remember, but that's just like, I think that's something good to note for listeners or viewers, for people that are curious, like how do you navigate that so that you're not directly influencing like 14, 15, and 16-year-olds with perhaps what they would consider like negative advertising and imagery pertaining to cannabis use and advocating it and like, you know, influencing that demographic. And, you know, majority of my demographic is not under the age of 21. But for me, it's just like, I try to show that it can be used responsibly. And that's the most important thing. And when I do get on podcasts that we specifically talk about cannabis use, I talk about ways that you can use it safely, especially if you're a first timer, like when you go out on the trail, starting with an extremely small amount of THC, something that it may not even really do anything, but look, on the next run, try just an incremental amount more. And I think that's such a great way to enjoy it without having like a really bad panic attack or anxiety attack, because taking too much at once can be like overload stressful. And I have made those mistakes when I first started using edibles per se. And like, I think that's what's great is like, I'm one of few people, at least in the ultra running community, that can say, look, if you're going to try it, do this and that, and don't do this. And now people at least have like a safe platform to go to and try things out. And it definitely seems like once a week I get someone on Instagram or Facebook messaging saying like, hey, looking to try something, or like, what's your favorite strain? And yeah, it's pretty neat.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the world is changing, man. Like, you know, a generation or two before us, alcohol was so big, and it was just like people just having cocktails at lunch like it was no big deal, and smoking cigarettes. And that was back when cigarettes were labeled as being healthy. And, you know, times have changed.
Yeah, as long as you had the filtered one, it was okay.
Yeah, you're good to go. And, you know, times have changed. And now there's like small little niche movements like I've seen online and on Instagram of you know, people our age, your age, you're a little bit younger than me, like just saying, you know, I don't think we need alcohol, or I don't think I need alcohol in my life personally. Like I'll still experiment with cannabis and a few other things, but alcohol is really like a poison. And a lot of people are starting to say no to it and opening up to these other things. And so I think it's important what you're doing and, you know, coming out and saying, you know, be careful. Don't overdose on the stuff, because that's going to turn you off completely if you've never used it before. But if you use it in the right way, you can go out in the woods and have a spiritual experience, and it's going to amplify that spiritual experience. So
exactly. Yeah. And I think one other thing outside of like the, you know, kind of hippie cliche, amplified experiences, I really think it allows you to be more in tune with what's going on in your body. It like it brings this acute awareness to what, say, tenderness in the knee or tenderness in the Achilles. Like for me, at least, I can actually really feel the movement in each part of my body a little bit better, and it allows me to say like, oh, when I get home, it's pretty clear I need to do some glute strengthening for the next week, or I really need to focus on stretching my hamstrings out. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits for me is when I am feeling like I tweaked something or I might be borderline injured, it reins me in and pulls me back, and I don't push as hard, especially when I use THC before a run. And that's part of the reason why I do it is I actually, more often than not, I only use THC on my easy runs, whereas on my workout days, I do not. I just, that's a part of my training and what I found and developed over time.
Yeah. Good for you, man. You're doing the right thing. So yeah, just stay on the right path. So you and Sabrina are both running coaches as well as sponsored professional athletes. How do you map out your own personal training week? Is it based on vert, based on mileage, hours? I'm sure it depends on what's coming up in your future.
Absolutely. You know, it definitely depends upon the race. I would say anything under 100 miles. I don't, and I haven't in a while. I don't plan out like way in advance. I basically go week by week, and I know what I want to accomplish within that week. So I don't like say I need to do this on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but rather I just kind of go on feel throughout the week. And with that being said, it's usually 3 to 4 easy runs, 1 tempo run, and 1 workout, workout being 400, 800, 1200, or 1600s. And then I just go week by week. I usually do 3 weeks on, 1 week off, and the 1 week off is usually just like 2 easy runs and 1 workout. And then I would say more specifically do 100 miles and above. You know, the workouts they're definitely, I'm not doing as many. It's definitely something I would like to actually implement more of in the future. And it is not that I haven't in the past. I think once I start training for hundreds, it's like the tempo run becomes the workout, like every single week. And I think that's something I actually would like to change and start to implement something a little more structured there. But with most 100s, it becomes more mileage and vertical based. And with the hundreds I have been doing in the last few years, I would say throughout the summer, the average vertical is like 25 to 30K a week for 100 to 120-ish miles. I found that like once I start creeping over 100, I start to lose a little bit of quality. But there's also something to be said about the quantity. Last year I ran Fat Dog and my biggest week was 165 miles before doing a 17-day taper. And I think there was something to be said about that quantity that I logged. I felt really strong. But for training for anything under a 100-mile race, like I don't think you really need to go over 80 miles.
Sure. Yeah. You say 17-day taper, and that sounds very specific. How did you come up with that number?
So I've read a few times that 3 weeks is like basically how long your body holds on to a long run. And I guess I just like mentally for me, it's like, okay, I grabbed an extra 4 days that I like, there's like a little bit of wiggle room there. And so I do 17 days for 100 milers. And that might be just like part superstition. It's just something I've done for a while. And then 100K, 50 mile, 50K. Well, let's say 100K, 100 miles, usually about a 2-week taper. And then my most recent 50K, I only did a 1-week taper. But I guess part of that was just because I hadn't been training as much as I normally had for that race. But that's not too far off what I would do anyway.
For sure. Yeah. And I'm guessing you're mixing in a bunch of cross training as well.
Lots. Yeah. And that's just because I really enjoy split boarding. So long as conditions allow, I really do like split boarding quite a bit through the winter. And then in the summer, just as recovery days, I'll use rock climbing and mountain biking as and I should be clear, when I say mountain biking, I mean riding down gravel roads. I'm a terrible mountain biker. Just like, honestly, it's just to get my legs moving. But yeah, I definitely, I'm a huge proponent of cross training. And from the coaching standpoint, I have a lot of my athletes do quite a bit of cross training, whether it be if they're up for it, cycling, or just functional strength in their living room without even using weights. So yeah.
How do you feel about strength training and yoga?
I think it helps keep me injury free. It's a lot of my strength training is definitely tailored from my PT. So it's pretty specific to just like glute and core strength and keeping my hips aligned. None of it's sexy. None of it's fun. I don't really want to do any of it, but I do end up doing probably 3 to 4 days a week of strength training for about 30 to 40 minutes. But I mean, the truth is when I stay on top of strength training and stay on top of yoga / stretching, I stay injury free. And then in addition to that, I did a bit of an experiment leading up to the Backbone Trail FKT. And as I really stuck with and progressed doing yoga over the span of about 10 to 12 weeks, just really staying on top of it nearly daily, I actually started to see that my average stride length was greatly increasing.
Oh, wow.
So just an ability to open up my hips is really what it was.
That's pretty interesting. Is it something
that's
to keep up?
That Poros is correct.
Okay. Okay. Is it something you're going to stick with then? It sounds like pretty huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've been pretty good about stretching in yoga for the last few years. It's just that this last like 12-week block, I was doing it nearly daily.
Okay.
And I think there's a fine line there. I think you can easily overstretch. Like,
sure.
I think it's really important for people to know that like my form of yoga is like pretty soft. I'm just like, I don't like risking pulling something by doing by stretching. Like that's the last thing I want to do is get injured stretching in the living room.
Right. Wouldn't that be embarrassing? Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be at any races this year. Yeah, that would suck. How, anything else that you do in your life that you fit into your training that is kind of your little secret? Meditating, saunas, cold baths, anything crazy like that you're into?
Sure. I mean, most recently, in October, I decided to do a sober October challenge with Athletic Brewing.
Oh.
And I will admit I had like 2 or 3 beers throughout that month. Like one at a time. One was celebrating Serena's Nolan's finish. One was celebrating something else. But anyways, I almost completed sober October, and then up to today, I have been like equally as good with any type of alcohol consumption and just drinking non-alcoholic beer 6 of the 7 days of the week at least. Yeah. And it's really impacted the amount of energy I have in the morning. I'm consistently waking up pretty early. I mean, I've always been an early riser, but I would say like a pretty good indicator of the amount of energy I have in the morning is I typically only drink 1 cup of coffee in the morning anymore, whereas I used to drink like 3 to 5. And it's been a pretty, it's definitely been eye-opening in terms of recovery and just overall energy. And I'm really stoked on that. And like, I definitely have Athletic to thank for that. And it's not that like I had a drinking problem before. I would have 1 to 2 beers every night, but it was literally every single night. And I think that just added up as far as like just overall recovery went. And keep in mind that living at 9,300 feet, 2 beers is like kind of a lot. At least for me, it was. And so I've found some pretty good success with that. And also definitely am a big proponent of the sauna. However, we haven't been to one in a while because of COVID. All the saunas in Durango are closed to non-members, and it just doesn't make sense for us to be a member at any of like the gyms there because they're an hour 20 away on a good day. But I had used the sauna quite a bit for Western States training in 2017 and found tremendous success from that. And I guess to make it more useful for a listener, I was in the sauna about 3 days a week for about 40 minutes or so.
Yeah, that's important for Western because it gets hot in those canyons, man. I did Western in, like 2014, and I didn't have access to a sauna. And that particular summer, I had a driving job, and I drove around the whole summer with the windows up and the heat cranked, just sweating my nuts off. But it was great training because I got there, and it was like one of the hottest years it ever was, and I actually held up all right. So I was thankful I did it all, man. But
well, I guess I should admit then that so in place of the sauna this summer, I started doing super hot baths, and so do salt and just like excruciatingly hot bath, basically as hot as it'll get with the bathroom door closed, and that builds up steam. And I would like to imagine that is about as good as it's going to get, like as close to sauna as it's going to get.
Totally. I do the same thing. Dr. Rhonda Patrick said that hot baths are almost as efficient as saunas, especially if you do it at the end of a workout, because it just keeps your heart rate jacked up that much longer. So it's almost just like you're working out that much longer. You continue sweating. So yeah, I think it's so beneficial.
Are you referring to the podcast with Joe Rogan?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That was a really good I've had to listen to that like 2 or 3 times because it's just like straight over my head the first couple times.
Yeah, as all of our stuff is. I listened to it a couple times as well. But they always got these good nuggets of knowledge there that it's there's always stuff to pick up for sure. Cool, man. So I'm running my first 200 miler this year. What's your what's your advice for me? I've done a handful of hundreds. I've never done a 200. You got any advice for me? Do I change my training? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, So like, I guess the first thing that comes to mind would be actual race strategy. And, this varies person to person based on the experience you're trying to have out there. Are you looking for a semi-competitive experience?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I would say, with that in mind, I would really suggest limiting your naps or rest periods to no longer than 30 minutes. That was a big takeaway for me after Tour de Jean. And I just found that when I was resting too much, it was really negatively impacting my race, because it just became that much more difficult to wake up. It took that much more time when leaving the aid station to get moving again.
Yep.
And yeah, I've read a bit of race reports, and I just think that keeping it shorter than 30 minutes is pretty ideal, so that you don't go into a deep sleep. And then one little trick that I find really neat is, right before you go to sleep, take 50 to 100 milligrams of caffeine, so that when you're waking up, it's kicking in.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
yeah. And then you're just a rocket out of the aid station.
Cool.
And then I think one thing that some people miss, and maybe even myself, maybe I missed the ball on it a little bit with Tour de Jean, is perhaps I didn't hike enough in training. I think, a day or two a week devoted to only hiking and no running, I think can go a really long way in building that aerobic zone 1 base. I mean, if you're running 200 miles, like, how often are you ever going to leave zone 2?
Right.
So I think just like really dedicating yourself to just going super slow a couple times a week and keeping your heart rate really, really, really low, can go like a really long way with the fitness. And then what 200 are you doing?
Sangre de Cristo.
Oh, they have a 200 there?
Yeah, they do. Yeah. This year was the first year they did a 200, and they're doing it again next year as well. So.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, sure.
I had no idea. What's the vertical gain for that?
I knew you were going to ask me that, because I'm not even sure, man. I'm just one of those guys who just signs up, and I'm like, I'll worry about the vertical the week before the race,
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're good. I mean, and you're in the front range, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have access to vertical.
Oh,
so
totally.
It's
totally.
Like naturally you just end up doing it. So yeah, I think those would kind of be the bigger takeaways for me. Yeah. And don't get too, I don't know when's the race?
September. So there's like 9 months. It's a long way away.
See, and that was about the same time as Tour de Jean. And, I can honestly say, when I started training for that race, I really started buckling down in May, and that was the winter that was brutally light. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of snow, and the San Juans is 2018. Yeah, 2018. San Juans were completely clear. You could summit nearly anything you wanted in May, and I went for it. I went for it hard in May and June. And then I found myself in July and August, like, kind of crumbled, and ended up basically what I believe was like over tapering for Tour, because I just went so hard. And I think that's something easy to do for any like September ultra race, is like push super hard early in the summer and then kind of hit a breaking point. So I think that's something to be really, really conscious of.
That's a good point, because everybody gets fired up in May and June, and everyone's going guns ablazing at that point. They're feeling great. By the time September comes around, that's deep into the year. So
yeah. So I mean, the beginning of September 200, go hard in July.
Yeah.
Go hard in July, and maybe that first week of August, and then just take it in.
Good point.
It's easier said than done sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's all good stuff, man. How are you feeling? How's your, it looks like you're wiggling around in your chair. Is your back messed up?
So my back's actually doing pretty good. It's actually more the camera angle. But I mean, overall pretty well. I've done I finished the backbone 9 days ago. Okay. And since then I took 2 days off, and then I've done something every day since. Nothing hardcore, just getting out and touring, and then 3 or 4 different runs. Although I will say, after today, I did a 12-mile run with Sabrina, and definitely feeling a little something in my Achilles. So just going to take a couple days off. I've been eating a shit ton of donuts, and like not really. I've been treating my body like a classic American would through the holidays.
Perfect. You got to do
So
that
I'm
sometimes. All right.
I'm basically just gonna continue that right on through December, and when January hits, just jump right back into things. And
Cool.
after kind of feeling this little, I don't know, I don't know what's going on. I mean, after the FKT, I could feel this little ball kind of forming in on the side of my Achilles. I've had that happen before. I think if I just give it, you know, a little bit of rest here for the next few days or a week or so, it'll go away. Stay on top of stretching, and then I see my PT once or twice a month, and I have 3 scheduled appointments for January, and like I honestly can almost always bank on like whatever I have wrong after I see him, I'm gonna be good.
Nice.
So I just gotta wait until I see my PT.
Sounds like a good PT.
He's the man for sure.
Walk me through the backbone if you don't mind. How did it go for you, man? I mean, I'm guessing you went into this thing with an FKT in mind and you just went hard from the start, but what was the day like?
Yeah. So I'd like to preface this with I did get pretty lucky with weather. I mean, I ran the backbone in December. So like how more ideal does it get than running in SoCal in December? I think the high for the day was 68. I had cloud coverage for probably 40 of the 68 miles, which I couldn't have asked for, you know, really better weather conditions. But I think one thing that really set me up for success in retrospect was I had a crew of pacers that were, they all took about like 10 to 15 mile sections, and they were all pretty fast dudes. The first one had Aubrey Mydra, he's like just graduated college and ran cross country and track for NC State. So like I started with him and ran through the first 17 miles with him, and we went out like super, super hot. And I thought, you know what, like this is cool. Let's just set the tone early. And then picked up another young guy, Cody Logan, who's also a super fast young kid. And I think like really surrounding myself with people that kind of I think they had an expectation for me to just like run really fast the whole time. Or at least I think they did.
Sure.
And it helped because I felt like I needed to fulfill that expectation. So every time I picked up a new pacer, it was like, all right, let's start going hard again. and it, you know, one thing led to another, and like the day was just flying by. And I've told a couple of people this, like, I wish I had this like great story, but nothing ever really went particularly wrong. And like, I think a part of that is it was a 10-hour event. Like, unlike hundreds where they run, you know, you can run that up to a day long or longer. You're just asking for something to go wrong. I think 10 hours is achievable to do it as close to perfection as possible. Yeah, I mean, so like I said, I knew the trail pretty well. So first 17 miles, you just got a couple smaller climbs. The backbone trail mainly consists of 1,500 to 2,000 foot climbs of relatively runnable trail. There's sections with some type of technicality, but generally speaking, it is a runnable trail. And after looking at the profile and knowing what was on the back end of it, which was, so like the last 17 is net loss. You even get a bit of service road in there, which is the only point in the run that you get service road. I kind of planned my run accordingly around that, and just kind of saved gas all day for that final 17. And that last 17 were some of the best miles I've ever ran coming into, you know, the finish for 110 kilometer run or race.
Just like in that flow state, feeling good, feeling like this is what you were born to do type of feeling.
Oh, absolutely. And I had Jesse Haynes was crewing me, who's a great runner himself. And I'll be honest, he was just feeding me lines of just like, he knew all the right things to say at all the right times. And it just kept me going and going. And just like the miles were just flying by. And I think there's something to be said for having a good pacer that can do that. And I think just the biggest difference with Jesse in comparison to all of my other pacers is Jesse's been ultra running for a long time. And that was something I knew and I wanted to have at the end of the race, was someone with a lot of knowledge and would know how to deal with any kind of circumstance that could arise. And sure enough, that paid off.
Yeah. So you had a pacer with you the whole time?
Yeah, more because that trail has a lot of turnoffs, a lot of easy mistake turns that you can make, because you're coming out of multiple state parks. And then in addition to that, to the east of the trail, there's almost always in the distance a town, and there's always a trail that you can like basically hook a right and take into that town. And then to the west, you could always hook a left and take a trail down to the ocean. So like you have all these opportunities where it's super easy to misnavigate. And all the pacers I had were super knowledgeable of the trail. And even Cody went out of his way to actually run his section a couple times before he picked me up. So it just, it made everything a little more seamless. Do I feel a little guilty? Yes. But I was out there to run fast, and totally. in order to do that, I set myself up for success.
Good. Yeah. Good for you. You did the right thing. What are some of your favorite things your pacers do for you or did for you that day? So we started this business about a year and a half ago, kind of around the pacing idea. So if someone comes into Colorado, they don't have a pacer for their race, they can call us and we'll come out to Leadville or whatever race and we'll pace their crew for them.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested in the pacer aspect. What's your favorite things they did?
I would say this was the first time in more of a race setting that I allowed my pacers to actually quote unquote pace. Like they were in front of me from mile 1 to 68.
Okay.
And that's one of the biggest differences I think with an FKT in comparison to a race is some races don't allow, as you know, to have the pacer in front. They're more or less just a safety runner for behind you.
Yes.
And that was probably what I enjoyed most. Was I felt really motivated to push hard and keep up. That's what I was like. Literally, I was just keeping up for 68 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And my pacers did a great job of managing, engaging, like going too fast versus going too slow. Mm-hmm. And I think they picked up on that great. And I would say that was the biggest benefit and takeaway that I would say I liked from those pacers was they managed to just push me just the right amount to break the record without breaking me before I got there.
Nice. Yeah. Had you run with all of them previously? Were you familiar with their style? Oh, really?
Yeah. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pacers, and I had only ran with Jesse. And the rest they're now friends. They were great people to have out there. One of them, Ben Atkins, he paced nearly every person that went for an FKT on that trail this summer. So he knew the trail real well.
Oh, that's the guy. That's the guy to have.
Oh, he was really awesome guy. Super tolerable. I had been through the middle section, or the middle miles of the backbone, which is kind of just a grueling, undulating terrain that's not real inspiring. You can never see the ocean. And it was when the sun was out. So I really am thankful of how tolerant he was with me, because I was a little grumpy at times. And when I say grumpy, I just mean I wasn't talking. Like, sure. And I made that clear with my pacers. It's something that I'm like, hey, I'll let them know. I just don't want to talk for the next hour. Let's just grind this out.
Yep. Fair enough. Sometimes that's what you got to do to get it done, man. It makes sense. What did your year look like? Did you have a bunch of races that were canceled before this FKT?
I did. Yeah. And a lot of them are going to roll over to next year. So I was signed up for Transvolcania. Well, I was planning on Transvolcania. I wasn't signed up. And then Lavaredo, 120K in June. And then what's weird is I was like really highly considering Tour. I was signed up for Tour de Jean. And I say that's weird because now I don't want to run that far. But I guess something last year around this time inspired me to do that. I'm just glad I'm just glad I have the wherewithal now to realize that I don't want to run 200 miles. And then I was signed up for a new race in Bhutan. It's a new stage race, 5-day stage race, in which I will do that next year alongside CCC and Laboredo.
Oh, cool. It's a stacked year.
Yeah. And I guess I'm kind of justifying a little bit because the stage race in Bhutan is definitely far. I mean, it's 200 miles. However, it is an average of like 50K a day. And that's something new for me. I've never done a stage race, which sounds kind of exciting. And I just look at it like it's like a super hard training week as opposed to a 200-mile race.
Totally.
But I would say I'm most looking forward to Laboredo and CCC.
Okay, cool. And Nolan's, is that something that's still on the back burner?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's there. I think it's one of those things that it's like, I really don't want to think about it right now. And I can see myself maybe next June, just like going out there and going for a few training runs to test the waters and like see, would I be stoked on doing all of these 14ers in one go? I think I truly believe the ability is there to run it fast. I think it's a 38 or 39 hour course. I just need to go out there and have the right day, adequate training, obviously, but I think the passion has to be there as well. Like that's so difficult, man. It is so, I have so much respect for Sabrina for completing it twice because I genuinely believe it's the hardest fucking thing you can do.
Dude, it is, man. It really is. And it's just hard to put words to, you try and explain it to people who just don't quite understand. And it's like, it's just the hardest thing in the world, man. I just don't even.
So hard. Yeah. And I have so much respect for everyone that's done it, but bonus is I know the route now. So, the time I need to spend out there is far less than what I did last year. Go out there and just kind of run a few of the peaks and just redial in and become reacquainted if I do decide to go do it again. As of right now, that's not the plan. And I really, really would like to think we're going to be racing, but if we're not, maybe that'll change.
Sure. Yeah. If not this year, maybe a couple years down the road. That Nolan's isn't going anywhere. So
it's not, but I'm a little worried because it's just,
it's getting so popular
that it's getting that. And that's the problem is I do tend to think that maybe the Forest Service is going to catch on to all these people running straight down the mountains, pushing rocks down, and slowly but surely, what's the word I'm looking for here? When you're washing away the rocks, eroding the mountains.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I would like to think that, people that aren't specifically out there training for Nolan's won't be doing that, but more and more foot traffic out there. It's my understanding that there's starting to be like kind of little like game like trails that have been made by us people for Nolan's that weren't there 10 years ago.
Totally.
So we're starting to like really forge a Nolan's 14 path through those mountains. So it's changing quite a bit, which, also makes me wonder, will the 14ers initiative start basically just putting in new trails that make a Nolan's 14 path?
Yeah. Yeah, it could happen.
That could upset some people big time, me even saying that.
Did you set an FKT on Yale Peak this year?
Yeah. Yale, La Plata, and Handies were the 14ers I did for just like speed records.
Is that just when you were out there training and scouting? Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And Handies is just kind of in our backyard here in Silverton. And
Handies too. I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. The big reasoning behind that was just it's ours. That's Silverton's local 14er, and it just kind of made sense to me. Like, I live here, like I want that record.
Might as well grab it. It should be yours, 100%.
Yeah, so it was kind of neat to go out there and do that.
For sure. No, I asked specifically about Yale because I looked at your track when you were out on the Nolan's line, and do you have a certain way that you come down Yale? Like, do you go down that avalanche gully or the airplane gully, or which way did you come down going south to north?
No, we don't go down the airplane gully. I understand a lot of people go that way. We never even looked at that route. Really? So coming off of Yale, we follow the ridge. Is that east? Yeah, follow the ridge east, and then cut hard right and just kind of drop through the grassy bowl. And when you drop through that grassy bowl off of Yale, it's basically the very first chute to the left. And you just drop straight down that chute, and it's fairly good footing. And then from there, you're just running through the basin. You just draw a straight line through the basin and through the woods, and it just drops you right onto that trail that, North Cottonwood Creek Trail, I believe.
Yep. It takes you up Columbia.
Yeah, it seemed pretty simple. Like, there's not a lot of turning. You get off the summit quick. And that was kind of one of our bigger goals for Sabrina and I, was like, how quickly can we just get out of altitude?
Okay. I'll have to check that out. I've never been down that way. And I bring it up because when I spoke with Andrew Hamilton, he had looked at your track as well. And he's like, this Avery guy, man, he got down Yale faster than anybody ever. And he's like, I want to go check out his way. Really? Okay.
Yeah. I personally think that is a good route. And I'm glad that there was, like, it was kind of relatively, you could tell what I was doing, because I had my tracker set for every 30 minutes. And Sabrina told me that, like, later that night, she told me people were really salty because it wasn't showing, like, it was showing I was skipping peaks. But that's what I was using my watch for. My watch was doing, obviously, like, every 60-second pings.
Yep.
And whereas the Garmin InReach was just, like, backup for like, evidence per se. And I had talked to, I think I talked to Peter Bachwin before I went out, and I was like, hey man, is it cool if I put this thing on every 30 minutes? And he was like, it's all good. But I think people are a little bit they're definitely a little salty that I was, quote unquote, not summoning the peaks. But I can assure you I tagged all the ones that I did do.
Dude, you always get the armchair quarterbacks, right? These guys that are just sitting at home with a bag of potato chips, they're like, oh, you skipped a peak.
They're just waiting. For me to make a mistake.
Yeah, totally. Oh, that's crazy. Oh man, it's been awesome talking with you, dude.
For sure.
Any shout outs you want to give? Sponsors, anybody?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Obviously, like I mentioned earlier, a big thank you to Athletic Brewing. They were
good non-alcoholic beer. That's good stuff.
Yes. Yeah, and they were my big sponsor for last year and going into next year. And I think we're going to be creating a pretty long-term relationship. And then also big thanks to Mirror Energy. I've had a 3 or 4 year relationship with them now. And then my cannabis sponsor, Medically Correct, which the big product that I use of theirs is the Quick Effects edibles. Just really quality product that the onset time for the psychoactive effect of the THC is only about 15 to 30 minutes in comparison to their competitors, which is usually an hour to an hour and a half, which is just like, no one has time to wait that long and plan their day out like that. So I really appreciate Quick Effects. And thank you for letting me have a platform to talk about them on.
Oh, dude. Yeah, absolutely. Do they have a CBD line that they pushed as well? Yeah. Is it?
Yeah, they sure do. It's called True Pura. Yeah. So like the parent brand over all of those is called Medically Correct. And I've actually been running under that company for 8 years now. The original brand under Medically Correct I ran for was called Incredibles, which that's an edible company that's been around basically since Colorado went legal. So I'm like really thankful for Medically Correct and the owner, Bob Ashino, because he's been helping me ever since within the first month, I kind of announced my advocacy for cannabis living in Colorado. I became an athlete under Bob Ashino's wing. So really awesome.
Did you get any hate when you kind of came out as a cannabis supporter?
To some extent. I mean, like super classic cliche, like, oh, it's fine. Let the stoner do what he does. Like, he's not going to beat anybody. Then in time when I was beating people got mad about that. And then all of a sudden, this was the wildest thing. And I've always said this, it's like, ever since the war on drugs, there's been this stigma around cannabis that like lowlifes, lazy people, and criminals use it. And then all of a sudden, when some guy starts winning races, it's a PED out of
Totally,
nowhere.
totally. Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he's using it as a performance enhancing drug. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, but there's been a little bit of that. And, you know, obviously I'm biased because I see what's on my feed, and my feed are people that, you know, obviously already like me and follow me. So I see more of the positive comments and notes. But with that being said, man, there's been a massive shift of thinking, especially within ultra running in the last 3 or 4 years. When I first became an advocate and kind of was outspoken about that, it was really, really difficult to get any type of shoe sponsor or like really like run related sponsor. And Innovate Shoe Company was the first to kind of like test the waters on that and help me out. And they didn't care at all. They were totally awesome about it. And now I'm seeing a shift in that thought, like with a lot of the shoe companies. A lot of them now, I mean, they know who I am. They know what I'm about. And that conversation really doesn't exist anymore because they're treating it the same way that they would treat alcohol. Like when Hoka signed Walmsley, they weren't like, we don't want you to drink beer, you know? So, and that's how it should be treated, like you're an adult. So I really appreciate that. And we're making like big leaps and bounds in normalization, which is great.
Totally. Yeah. No, the world is changing, man. And in the ultra running world, I think that you're the front runner. You're the first spokesperson. So thanks for doing your work, man. You're doing good stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, here soon I'm not going to have that much shine anymore because everyone else is going to catch on.
That's true. That's true. You're going to have to think of something else to come out of the closet with.
You know, I'm just gonna stick to the green. It's worked for me for this long.
Right on. Avery, you're a badass, dude. Just keep doing what you're doing, man. Thanks so much for chatting with me. All right, man. Good luck next year. We'll be keeping an eye on you and go out and get after it, buddy.
For sure, man. Good luck with the Sangre 200, man. That's super sweet. I had no idea they had that, so now I'm going to keep an eye out for that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, there's no awards for first place in his races. He gives awards to the last place people.
Oh, that's rad, man. You know what? That's kind of like a similar concept to High Five. I'm sure. Have you heard of High Five in Lake City?
No.
No awards. Actually, no course markings. You just got to summit. So you have to summit 5 14ers, and there are some checkpoints along the way. And there's a general route that everybody runs, but you don't receive the checkpoints until I think it's like a night or two before, maybe it's in a week before. But people they one way or another have time to prepare for it. But a super gnarly race in Lake City, 100 miles with like, I don't know, 40K a climb, 38K a climb. And you finish the race and he shakes your hands and says, go home. Yeah, super rad. I can get behind that.
What's the name of it again?
It's called High Five.
High Five. No kidding.
Yeah, it's super rad. You should take a look at it.
Cool. Awesome. Avery, you're badass. Keep doing your thing, man. Thanks so much. I appreciate you. Do big things, buddy.
Awesome, dude.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
Sounds good, buddy.